Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim or Simnaya, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So today we'll be talking something very important, and you all know that dozens of college campuses across the country. I mean, they actually were protesting, and some kind of or some are saying it that it's anti-Semitic for them to come out. So they saw them protesting as bullying. And I am asking, how is that bullying or how is that anti-Semitic? All these students on the campuses actually came out to tell them that what has been going on, it's really unfair. And you all know that most of the things that has been happening, they are so quick to talk about anti-Semitic. The same people that are very quick to talk about anti-Semitic are the ones cutting off electricity, water, all the internet, and all that. I mean, all the necessary facilities that people needed in Gaza, right? The same people that decided to take away some kids that were in hospital. I'm trying to mind my words, right? The kids that were in the hospital, some certain things were removed, and some hospitals were pew, and everything, some kids could not even make it to the next day and all that. I hope you get what I am saying. So people on the right are trying to protest and tell them that this has been going on for a long time and you all are not doing anything. You know what? Let's get into.
Hey guys, so there's a thing happening where, you know, members of the commentariat, people who are commenting on the protests on now dozens of college campuses across the country are, I don't know how else you can describe it other than bullying the students on these campuses by claiming that these protests, and I think out of a genuine fear that these protests will have a sort of 1968 effect, the 1968 anti-Vietnam War protests that roiled the Chicago Democratic Convention and really, cost Lyndon Baines Johnson the presidency because he ended up withdrawing. Hubert Humphrey ended up being the nominee. Long story short, essentially Vietnam drove Johnson off the ticket and Nixon ended up becoming president. And I think so out of a genuine fear that that is going to play out again, a fear that's being fueled on purpose by people like Christopher Rufo, the fake moral panic guy from critical race theory and DEI, and people on the right who are trying to glom onto these protests and push, the narrative that this is a reason to, I guess in their mind, vote for Donald Trump, who has an even worse record when it comes to Palestinians and Israelis and any idea of peace. But anyway, I think out of a genuine fear that a sort of 1968 moment is building, you're starting to see people in the Democratic side commentariat essentially try to bully and bludgeon these young people on these college campuses to essentially kind of order them to stop caring about what's happening in Gaza. Stop caring about the 34,000 people who are dead, who are mainly women and children. Stop protesting it. Stop talking about it. Stop being mad about it. Stop feeling any way about it. And trying to bully these students into shutting up and accepting that whatever it is that the Israeli government, which is a foreign government, a nation state government, does is fine, and you've got to accept it because otherwise you're going to hurt Joe Biden, and that's the narrative. And I get where that's coming from, out of a fear of a Trump presidency, which is something genuinely to fear. But that is happening at the same time that the leader of that nation state, Bibi Netanyahu, is making English language videos stating that not only are these protests inherently anti-Semitic, even though a lot of the students who are participating in the protests are themselves Jewish, And the Columbia University protests began with two organizations being banned from Columbia: Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace. The Columbia University chapters of both of those organizations were banned. That's part of what started the protests. One of those is Jewish Voice for Peace. But, so you've got the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, claiming that these protests are in and of themselves anti-Semitic because they're critical of Israel, a nation-state's policies. And then the second piece of it, you've got some American politicians, including some Democrats, saying the same thing, even though, some Jewish politicians like Bernie Sanders are saying the opposite, saying that's not true.
No, Mr. Netanyahu, it is not anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas to point out that in a little over 6 months, your extremist government has killed 34,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 78,000, 70% of whom are women and children. It is not anti-Semitic to point out that your bombing has completely destroyed more than 221,000 housing units in Gaza, leaving more than 1 million people homeless, almost half the population. It is not anti-Semitic to note that your government has obliterated Gaza's civilian infrastructure, electricity, water, and sewage. It is not anti-Semitic to realize that your government has annihilated Gaza's healthcare system, knocking 26 hospitals out of service and killing more than 400 healthcare workers. It is not anti-Semitic to condemn your government's destruction of all of Gaza's 12 universities and 56 of its schools, with hundreds more damage, leaving 625,000 students with no educational opportunities. It is not anti-Semitic to agree with virtually every humanitarian organization in saying that your government, in violation of American law, has unreasonably blocked humanitarian aid coming into Gaza, creating the conditions in which so many thousands of children face malnutrition and famine. Mr. Netanyahu, anti-Semitism is a vile and disgusting form of bigotry that has done unspeakable harm to many millions of people. But please, do not insult the intelligence of the American people by attempting to distract us from the immoral and illegal war policies of your extremist and racist government. Do not use anti-Semitism to deflect attention from the criminal indictment you are facing in the Israeli courts. It is not anti-Semitic to hold you accountable for your actions.
And then he's also saying, Netanyahu, that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, if they were to issue indictments against him, which would be individual indictments against himself and some of his war cabinet ministers, maybe his defense minister, we don't know who they might be, or even if the ICC is going to issue arrest warrants charging them with genocide and crimes against humanity or whatever. But he's saying those charges would be anti-Semitic.
You have to hear this to believe this. The International Criminal Court in The Hague is contemplating issuing arrest warrants against senior Israeli government and military officials as war criminals. This would be an outrage of historic proportions. International bodies like the ICC arose in the wake of the Holocaust committed against the Jewish people. They were set up to prevent such horrors, to prevent future genocides. Yet now, the International Court is trying to put Israel in the dock. It's trying to put us in the dock as we defend ourselves against genocidal terrorists and regimes, Iran of course, that openly works to destroy the one and only Jewish state. Branding Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism, those fires that are already raging on the campuses of America and across capitals around the world. It will also be the first time that a democratic country fighting for its life according to the rules of war is itself accused of war crimes.
Wait a minute, how sway? You're now taking the very real, very legitimate issue of anti-Semitism, which is spiking around the world, and which is a genuine problem, just as anti-Muslim bigotry is a rising and spiking problem around the world. These both are real, genuine things, but you're now saying that you're taking that very real thing and saying, no, 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 anti-Semitism is indicting me as an individual. You've now personalized it to yourself. So you're saying that you, because you are the head of this nation state, if you are indicted, that's anti-Semitism? Wait a minute. So you're saying that it's about you. It's about you yourself as this prime minister of a nation state. That if you get indicted for your actions, your decisions, the decisions that you made as the head of the nation state, that's anti-Semitism too? I need somebody to explain to me how that could possibly be. Because anti-Semitism is the hatred of a people based on their Jewish identity. And that is a pernicious and awful thing. But a criminal indictment of you, if it happens, and nobody knows if it's going to happen, it wouldn't be a criminal indictment, it would be a ICC indictment. If that happened, that's not hatred of Benjamin Netanyahu as a Jewish person. That is an assessment that Benjamin Netanyahu, as the head of a nation state, may have committed war crimes. That is a very...
Please understand that these kids have been protesting their entire lives. This is the Sandy Hook generation. These kids who are now in college were between kindergarten and 5th grade when Sandy Hook happened. They were between 6th grade and 11th grade when Parkland happened. These are kids who marched in the street in 2018 when Parkland was happening and nobody in the government was listening to them. Their entire experience of education has been under attack, whether they are hiding under desks during drills or barricading doors, or whether their schools are occupied by police officers. They have been in danger their entire education. It is inaccurate and blood-boiling when I hear Bibi Netanyahu call these kids anti-Semitic. Please understand, for context and juxtaposition, Israeli 18-year-olds are mandated to join the IDF. They spend their entire lives knowing that they will be trained as soldiers. American children are trained to be under siege. For these kids, there is no safe classroom to return to. The classroom has always been a space of volatility and chance. This is personal to me because these are my kids. I taught at a New York City public school for 10 years while I taught at Columbia. I also taught at NYU. I know these kids. And if you don't get what they've been through, the anxieties they faced, if you have not had to barricade yourself in a classroom with a bunch of students and make them be quiet so that we could all be safe, then you might not understand what this generation is standing up to.
So this is all I got from the stitches, and sincerely speaking, I am really so sick and tired of Netanyahu, and it looks like everywhere we look around, it is them, and the fact that they are not seeing anything wrong in what they are doing is something horrifying. This tells you the kind of soul most of them have, but then some of them do not have soul. And the fact, really, I just don't get it. Why America is still giving aids and all that to them. I really feel so sad. Like the last speaker said, being a teacher comes with a lot of experiences and anxiety and all that, especially if the people involved may have experienced some certain things and the rest of it. You all can see what has been going on, the student protesting and about what it's now, about what has been happening in Palestine, right? And the fact that they did not see anything wrong with how many thousand people being unalive, right, is really, it's kind of heartbreaking. And then, why is it that each time people try to point out the horrible things that they are doing or trying to point out their wrongs and all that, trying to come out to that was just a peaceful protest. I did not see anybody probably peeping or doing some. It was them protesting about what has been going on, right? When did he become anti-Semitic? Because it looks like some of them are finding it really hard to understand the meaning of anti-Semitic. The same people, if you give them chance, like they are very quick to tell people that you are anti-Semitic, right? But then if you give them, they are the ones going around screaming that they be wanting to say the N word or use the N word all their lives. Why is it that it's only black people that can use it? Just check the irony. Just, you can imagine. Really. And the fact that this man, to this very moment, is still the prime minister is something that baffles me, because I don't see how he is still there in position. And I think he should just resign, because I feel like he is not even very fit. He is not fit enough to handle that position and the rest of it. So yeah, really, I am just like, it's really crazy, with everything that has happened in Gaza, leaving how many populations, like, homeless and all that. And I do not think there is anything anti-Semitic that the government has, like, it really, that is, people are actually protesting and saying that this is what that is going on and we do not want this to happen. I mean, how did they even, like, people that keep saying that people are anti-Semitic and were the ones that cut off people's life, cut off people's water, sewage and every infrastructure, internet, everything that they got to have, like everything that people are supposed to have, they cut it off. And they wake up each day to remind us about anti-Semitic and the rest of it. There is nothing anti-Semitic to realize that the government has, like, done so many horrible things, especially in healthcare, removing some facilities or trying to, like, pew some hospitals and all that to make sure that some kids probably did not get to see the next day and all that. I mean, you all are the ones doing all the horrible things. People protesting are not being anti-Semitic. They are the ones coming out to tell you all that you all are doing great. So let's now judge the both things that will just, it's not. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.